When I was giving birth, I had to push my child through the ring of fire. I know you men listening might think, oh, geez, I don't want to hear about this. But look, we listen to your sports analogies. Trust me, this is a good one. When I had given birth to my first child, my labor was miserable, but my delivery was perfect. 2 pushes, she was out, didn't really feel much. With my second child, labor was easy, but the delivery was difficult. And with the second child, I had to go through what they call the ring of fire. I had never heard of it before, but my daughter was almost out. She was in the birth canal. I was in the throes of the worst pain there was. And as I finally pushed my daughter through, I felt this massive fire in my bottom area. And I pulled back. It was so bad. It was so much worse than the labor pains. I was like, that feels like fire. I can't do it. And one loving nurse looked at me and said, that's called the ring of fire. You have to go through it. My mind, in whatever time frame it took, seemed like forever, seemed like a short time, but I knew that in my mind I had to make a decision as these labor pains were coming upon me, as my body was just writhing, as this baby was trying to be born, as the pain was overcoming me. I knew my choices were to hold back and try to avoid the ring of fire or go through it. I knew that I wanted what was on the other side. I wanted a healthy, beautiful baby in my arms. And in this kind of quick conversation with yourself, it's like, what are my options? So I knew that to birth my child, I had to go through the most excruciating pain that I had known to that point. And I bared down and I pushed, and this fire just burned my whole lower half. And I pushed my child out, and instantly, the pain was gone. All of the pain. Anybody who's gone through labor and delivery knows just all of the pain. No labor, no baby, just it stopped. And in my arms was this beautiful baby girl. I was like, oh my gosh. And I had such elation, an elation I didn't feel with my first child because I was exhausted after her labor. This one, I was like, easy labor, baby's born. I just wanted to jump off that table. And I think now about the excitement. I was like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And I held this baby and I wanted to tell everybody, and they actually said, sit down. We got to sew you up. We got to do what we need to do. And it was just such a perfect analogy to the life we have to lead. I was just talking to a friend of mine, and she was talking about one of Father John Bosco's famous dreams. And in his dream, he was talking about paths and seeing the ones where the brambles and the thorns were getting tighter and tighter and tighter and closer together. And the guide that was with him was telling him, you have to go through that. To get where you want to go, you have to go through that. There's a shiny golden path, and there's this path strewn with brambles with thorns all over them. And as you go in, they were thicker and thicker, and you couldn't see through them. And then they were cutting you. And he said, you had to go through it. You had to go through it if you wanted what was on the other side. And on the other side is eternity. I recently talked to a young man who, when he was 12, his mother moved and left him alone, homeless. I've talked to other women where, well, I know another woman whose husband killed their child in front of her. I have heard some of the most wretched stories in my life. And while this isn't a negative podcast, what I've learned is that this world is the birth canal. This world is the time where we have to go through the pain. We have to go through the struggles. We have to be birthed into new life to prove God knows what we're going to choose. But to prove to God that we choose him, that we choose heaven, that despite all the thorns and thistles and brokenness and injuries and deaths and murders and rapes and tortures and everything, that we can just keep our eyes fixed on the outcome, fixed on God. And that is just hellacious to go through if you don't realize that you're going through it for a reason. That young boy that was left homeless had no idea that God had a purpose out of that. God wouldn't have allowed that had there not been a greater good. And though we may not yet know what that purpose is, God does. And when that man, that former 12-year-old, goes through that birth canal, dying to this self, dying to this life, being born into a new life, into eternity, and he opens his eyes, kind of like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. It's all darkness, it's all hurricane. Then all of a sudden you look and it's bright and technicolor and gold and streets and flowers and all the joys. And when that person's like, it was all worth it, then he will have understanding. Then that woman who went through the rape and still chose God will have a greater understanding why she had to go through that horrible trauma. Then the people who were abandoned by their spouses will open their eyes and say, now I see. The pain was all worth the outcome. Guys, I don't profess to be God, and I don't profess to know why he does what he does. I do trust him. I do trust he has a purpose. And just like when my children or grandchildren were 2 or 3 or 4, they didn't understand why I didn't let them stand at the edge of a cliff. They didn't understand why I didn't let them touch the shiny knife. They didn't understand why I had to yank them back from the fire. They didn't like that. But I didn't care whether they understood or not. I needed to do what was best for them. Of course, as they've aged, they've understood. So while I don't know why God allowed my family to break, why he allowed my daughter's friend to be raped, why he allowed this young man to become homeless at 12 because his mother abandoned him, I don't understand why. But I do have faith that God knows what he's doing. And that's what I wanted to tell you today. You've got to go through the ring of fire. You've got to walk through the brambles. Maybe God will share with you information on your journey here and there, why it's needed. Some people have received some information as to why. And then they've received that suffering with grace. But if you don't yet know why for specific details, what I'm asking you to do is trust God. Know that going through pain and suffering produces an outcome far greater than anything we can possibly comprehend. So you may have people you need to forgive. You may have thoughts you need to purify. You may have people that you need to go back and say, I'm sorry to. You may just have to drop to your knees and ask God to change your heart, purify your mind, heal you. But when he does, this tremendous peace will come over you, one like you've never understood before. Because he may not give you all the details, but that peace will say to you, I've got you. I know what I'm doing. I just want you to continue to trust me. So while I will encourage you to go read the dreams of Father John Bosco, Saint John Bosco, who talks about going through the brambles and having to get cut, very powerful stories. I think I might read one here. I want you to understand the value in the ring of fire. Fire purifies. I'm glad that I went through that fire, because what it has produced is a daughter, husband, 4 children. That's not counting my other daughter. The joys, the life, beauty that God has received from that, all because I chose to go through the ring of fire. Are you willing to do the same? I know you're going through some tough stuff right now, things that you throw your hands up and say, I can't live another day. But you can. It might hurt, but you can. And God will reward you when you get to the other side. He may even reward you in ways that you see now while you're still here. I can't make that promise. The journey is a little bit different for each one of us, but it's definitely full of brambles, thorns, and fire. But don't focus on going through it. Focus on what's on the other side once you do. And if you only knew, it would be effortless for you to run through that fire today. I hope this makes sense. Let me know your thoughts. I'm so honored to be able to help you in any way to get through the struggles of your life. I'm so grateful for the people who helped me get through mine, and the people who continue to help me and will be there for me. I'm here for you. You know where to find me. Christine@breakfastwithbacon.com. Now, God bless you. Thanks for watching Breakfast with Bacon, and remember to live your life sunny side up.